So now we will talk about some of the other intakes that what we can take into the body and how to see that it is useful for the body, that it is nurturing the body. Sunlight and air intake. More than 70% of the human body is water. I think we all know that. But did you know that the blood, the brain, the heart, there you have more than 70% water here also. In the lungs also, we think of lungs only as air, but 83% is water. In the bones, 33% is water. So basically, water is essential for the human body. Now we'll talk about what type of water to drink, meaning quality of water, quantity, how much, preparation of water, how we can change the qualities of the water based on how we prepare it. Storage, what type of vessels to store it in, and some considerations of when we consume it. So when we consume it, in what form we consume it, and so on. If you look at the quality of water, some factors which decide the quality of water which is appropriate for our intake is purity, which is a very big issue today, pH, another big issue, temperature, and dissolved salts and minerals in water. So let's look at this one by one. Purity. Is the water pure and fit to drink? That is the first question, isn't it? So there are many pure freshwater sources like natural springs, geysers. Those were a major source of water for human beings way back. But today these are very scarce. Maybe in some remote hilly areas you can find these kind of natural springs, geysers. But for the majority of the people, this is a largely unavailable source. Rainwater, if it is collected hygienically after the first few rains of the monsoon, is also pure fresh water. But that also is a little cumbersome for many people. So largely we are not using that much. Water that we are using in our homes today is largely coming from the groundwater, from wells, rivers, lakes, streams, reservoirs. Isn't it? So purity wise, it's always a question mark because many of these sources are polluted. For drinking, therefore, we very often use purification methods by various interventions in our homes. How many of us are using some method of water purification in our home? The others are not using any purification method. You are using only tap water? Oh, can water. Okay. Okay, that I did not take into consideration. So if you look at these purification methods, So we are using many ways of purifying the water. If we look at the pH, the next factor that we must think of when we think of the quality of water. What is the pH of the water we are drinking? So on a scale of 1 to 14, with 7 being neutral, less than 7 being acidic, more than 7 being alkaline, the recommended pH of water for our intake is approximately 6.5 to 8.5 is considered okay. But mildly alkaline water is beneficial, it's better for the body. If we look at the temperature, if it is as close as possible to the gut temperature, that is better. So what temperature of water should we consume? If you take room temperature water, it maintains your health without interfering too much. If you take chilled water, because the inside temperature is warm and you're taking chilled water, it's like a sudden shock for the body. It inhibits the digestive enzymes and it weakens the digestion. Warm water strengthens the digestive enzymes and immune system. So, if we have a choice, better to consume warm water. Coming to the dissolved salts and minerals in water. These play a major role in the health of the body. We are all aware of many of these, calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, zinc, copper, iron, many are there. These are very important for the health of the body. So, water must contain these. So, if you look at the quality of water today, if you look at the quality of pure groundwater, if it is pure, then yes, groundwater has a pH between 6.5 to 8.5, so it's okay. It is also mildly alkaline because it is more than 7 to 7.5. And it contains minerals at optimum levels for the human body. However, is the groundwater today pure and safe to drink? That is a question mark. So it is polluted by sewage water, chemicals, fertilizers, insecticides, pesticides, all those things that we use. Fluoride, which is a naturally occurring element in the groundwater, is also can be high in some regions. The WHO permissible safe limit is up to 1 milligram per liter. But in many regions, it may be higher than the safe limit. And there also you can see that agricultural fertilizers, industrial activity, all this may be adding to the problem. And if we take chronic water chronically with excess fluoride, then it leads to fluorosis, which is not so desirable. Skeletal fluorosis leads to weaker bones, pain and stiffness in the joints. And dental fluorosis leads to brownish yellow staining of the teeth. So, with all of these constraints, we may find the need to purify with filters. So out of the people here who are purifying the water in their home, how many are using RO filters? Oh, more hands have come up now. So when we are using filters, now we filter with UV filter, it gets rid of the germs. You use RO filter, it kills the germs, plus it uses the process of reverse osmosis. In this process, minerals also get removed from the water. So pH is reduced, making the water acidic. Of the people who are using the RO water, how many of us are checking the pH of the water? Very nice. 2-3 of us are there, but we can all do that. pH meters are available. You can get it online. You can check. So the two problems that come about with RO is, first of all, the water that we are consuming doesn't have any minerals because we have removed the minerals because of the RO. Secondly, because there are no minerals in the water and this water you are drinking is mineral-less, now the minerals from our bones and joints, they get leached into this water and they get thrown out of the body. So in two major ways we are losing minerals. One is because the water itself doesn't have minerals, and the other is because it is mineral-less. As it goes to the body, it takes the minerals from the bones and then goes out through the kidneys and is out of the body. So this is an issue. So what water to drink? Options are, you can boil the water at home. You can use UV purified water. You can use RO purified water, but there is mineral loss. So you can check TDS and pH regularly. Many times the people who come to install the RO, they will tell you that they have checked TDS, total dissolved salts. So that has to be in a certain fixed range. But as you keep using the RO, this fluctuates. This range fluctuates. So you should check it every few months. Also, you can get pH meters and you can check the pH regularly. You don't want to be drinking acidic water. What about packaged mineral water? Maybe it is similar to RO water. We don't know. The other problem with packaged drinking water is it is packaged in plastic bottles. Do you know that microplastics are now being seen in the body of all human beings, including newborn babies? So if that's not such a great choice, what about bottled alkaline water? That also comes with a very high price, provided it is not in plastic. So you can use homemade alkaline water. So in the water, you can put a few sprigs of mint, keep it overnight, drink it next day. You can do this with mint, you can do this with lemon, you can do this with cucumber slices kept in the water. So this is one way you can alkalinize your water for drinking purposes. Traditionally, water was stored in earthen or copper pots. So in earthen pots, you are getting from the material that the earthen pot is made of, you get some natural vitamins and minerals which come into the water. That can be a source of the minerals. Copper pots are also very useful for storing water. So many options are there. Whatever we choose, we can choose wisely. make the best of the options available. How about liquids other than water? Some people feel that if I drink tea or coffee, anyway it's like drinking water. Is it? It's not. What about cold drinks, sodas, fizzy drinks? They are also very harmful. Again, if you see, they go through the process of carbonation. That means pressured carbon dioxide is injected into the water with force, so it leads to the formation of carbonic acid. That's why when the bottle is opened, this pressure is released and all this dissolved carbon dioxide starts escaping in form of bubbles. So the problem with this is, one is carbonated drinks are 94% water. So why not drink water only? The other is the pH is 2.5 to 3.5. Just imagine how much acidic water we are consuming if we consume these. Of course, it will lead to problems in the body. The body pH will go down tremendously. So some of the cold drinks, you must have heard, people say they work very well as toilet cleaners. Have you heard this? Now we know why. It has a pH of 2.5 to 3.5. So it's like acid being used to clean the toilets. But imagine, cleaning toilet is one thing. But imagine if we are putting this into the body, what havoc it will play with the body. What about packaged fruit juices? You have to check the fine print, like we were talking some time back. Many times they add sugar, artificial color, flavor, all this. And many times even the 100% fruit juice, so-called 100% fruit juice, is reconstituted powder. Tea, coffee, they are stimulants. They do have theophylline and caffeine. And we do know that these are actually going to remove some water from the body. So they don't add to the water, rather they increase the excretion of the water. Healthier choices can be buttermilk and so on, fresh squeezed home squeezed fruit juice, herbal teas. You can add whatever you want. We call it tea, but it's not really tea leaves. Again, tea leaves, if they are unprocessed, it is fine. But the tea that we normally consume is highly processed. And then we brew it and brew it and brew it. And each time you brew it more and more and more, it is releasing tannin, highly acidic, harmful for the body. So not so good. But safer options, you can have natural flowers like hibiscus. People drink in, take boiled water in a cup and put the hibiscus, a clean washed hibiscus flower in it, and close the lid. Let it brew on its own for some time without heat. Then you can drink it. Similarly, in the mountains, you have rhododendron. That is highly beneficial. So people use dried rhododendron flowers. And you can take hot water, put the rhododendron flower, dried rhododendron flower, and close it. Keep it for some time, and it will do the same thing. Bhutan uses many of these as their teas. Similarly, you can have tulsi, you can have mint, pudina. You can also use ginger water as a tea. It can be very refreshing. How much water to drink? So if we drink too little or too much, both are problematic. So more is not necessarily better. There can be, if we drink too much water, there may be electrolyte imbalances in the body. Then it will lead to disharmony. If we take too less, again there will be disharmony. So, from the Food and Nutrition Board into 2024, they put forward some quantities which are recommended according to the age and gender. In the adult males, adult females. Then if we see, that is one factor that we can take into consideration. Another factor is body constitution. So we talked yesterday about type B. Lot of heat in the body, so they need more water. They profusely sweat. Type C, they retain lot of fluid, so they don't need so much water. Type A, they have dryness, constipation, they need increased water. So this is another consideration for the water intake. Then physical activity. If we are doing a lot of manual labor outdoors, in the sun, we are sweating, then we need more water to take care of this water loss. If we have sedentary desk jobs with less physical activity, we require less water. Let's look at further considerations. Season. So if it is summer, it is hot, we need more water. So we can consciously drink more water. Winter and rainy season, there is very little sweat, very little loss of body water. So we don't need as much. When you're out in the sun, you need more. If you're in an air-conditioned environment, then what? So if it is mildly air-conditioned, you will sweat less, and maybe there might be a slightly decreased requirement of water. But if it is highly air-conditioned and you're spending a lot of time there, now it will lead to excessive dryness. And so you may need more water. During the daytime when it is hot, the body needs more water. At night when the temperatures are down and it is cooler, the body needs less water. If the food is dry, water requirement is more. If the food is wet, watery, liquidy, water requirement is less. These are commonplace things, but just that we may not consider these when we think of water. So water as water doesn't have to be always consumed separately. We can add it in the meal by making our meals more liquidy, more watery. Deep fried, very oily, spicy foods, if we have those, water requirement is more. If foods are cooked with a small quantity of oil and mild spices, the body needs less water. In special circumstances like pregnancy and lactation, more water is required, obviously. And for the growing baby, because the baby is feeding from the mother needs more water when she is breastfeeding the baby, even more than when she is pregnant. Just that the baby has come out doesn't mean her water requirement is now decreased. Water requirement actually goes up when she is breastfeeding. So we talked about boiling for purification. How many people are boiling the water? Very nice. Okay. So one of the simplest ways to purify water, make it safe for consumption, is to boil the water. How to boil it? You should bring it to a rolling boil for at least 1 full minute. Then allow it to cool till it is lukewarm, and consume it at this temperature of lukewarm, because that will be most beneficial for the body, rather than cooling it completely down. Water can also be used as therapy. If you want to use it as therapy, you have to boil it for extended periods, reduce it to half of the quantity or less, and then consume it when it is slightly warm. So people who have digestive issues, who are having problems with digestion, sometimes this therapy is also recommended. To drink the water after boiling and reducing to half or less the quantity, and then drinking that water. You would think it's the same water. What's the difference? How is it going to help the digestion? But it makes a lot of difference. So many benefits are there of drinking warm or hot water. I won't go into all of them, but it is, many benefits are there. It is linked with longevity also, immunity, raising the immunity, many other factors. Any questions so far? Water for making it more suitable for the body. So you can add certain herbs and spices. So like we were mentioning earlier, cumin seeds, if they are boiled in hot water, it will improve the digestion. It can also relieve abdominal pain. They can help remove mucus from the chest. It improves your digestion. That can be done. Ginger, it can be boiled in water. Like we mentioned, ginger is also anti-inflammatory. It boosts your immunity. It is an antioxidant. Very good for flatulence and poor digestion. Very good for even colds and coughs. And it relieves cramps, improves blood circulation. Cinnamon boiled in water. This helps to regulate blood sugar and improves the digestion, helps reduce fat, can be used for viral illnesses. Similarly, clove. Did you know that clove can help get rid of parasites in the water? So traditionally, many people used to use this method. Nowadays, we are in a very, very busy lifestyle where work has taken first priority. So many times we may not seem to have the time for these things. But if we pay attention and if we are aware of the benefits, then we can use some of these methods. Tulsi and lemon can be added to the water. You can have boiled, all these ingredients boiled in the water. How many of us know what is giloy? Okay. We'll come to it when we come to herbal remedies. It's a creeper, a plant, which is very good for health. It looks somewhat like a pan leaf, the same kind of shape, but it's not the pan betel leaf. We can store the water in copper utensils. That's a natural method of purification, which has been traditionally used in India from long time. Now science also says that yes, it is useful. It kills harmful microorganisms in water. So all these bacteria, viruses, molds, fungi, they can be killed with just by storing the water in a copper utensil. Similarly, earthen pots. Traditionally, they are used for storing water, particularly in the summer. So it cools the water and keeps the body cool in summer. It enriches the water with the micronutrients. And of course, I think we all like the taste and smell of the water that you get from earthen pots. So all these options are there for storage of pots. And maybe in the summer we can use earthen pots, and in winter we can use copper pots or whatever. Packaged drinking water. So plastic bottles, plastic containers are not so useful, not so good for the body. And what about the safety or the purity? The purity for bottled water standards, the government standards or whatever standards there are for tap water, are very similar to those for bottled water. So it may not be that our bottled water is very much superior if we are buying the water. So we have to be a little more alert and have more background on the water sources that we are using for drinking. And in this packaged drinking water, even though we call it mineral water, have you noticed? This packaged drinking water, they call it mineral water. But if it is similar to the RO water, then it has no minerals. Very interesting. See how things are labeled, and we may get fooled into thinking that this is very useful for the body. Hygienic. So, in one way we may think it is hygienic, but also there may be microplastics, small particles that leach into the water that are entering the body. These chemicals, this bisphenol, BPA, this is one of the things that has been linked with interfering with hormone function, causing cancer and so on. And what about the environmental impact? Of course, plastic is not so good for the environment. So that's damaging our natural environment also. So all these considerations are there for bottled water. When and how much to drink? So if the body is made up of more than 70% water, we might think that the more we drink, the better it is. Not so. It is important to be aware of the sensation of thirst. When we are thirsty, certainly we should drink. Sometimes what happens is, when we are not paying attention to the sensation of thirst, we might ignore it and we might eat something. Supposing we are not aware, we are actually thirsty. But if we are not paying attention to that sensation, we look around and we eat something. But that is actually going to make it worse, because whenever you eat something, for the digestion you need some water. So one should be aware. Carrying a water bottle everywhere we go and drinking water all the day, that is not necessary. If we really drink properly when we are thirsty at the appropriate times, then we may not have to do this. What about in relation to meals, before, during or after meals? Lot of confusion is there about this. So if you drink it just before the meal, it's going to dilute the digestive enzymes, it will decrease the appetite, and you will not be able to take in food properly. Immediately after the meal, again the digestive process will be hampered, fat metabolism will be hampered, there can be obesity. With the meal, large quantities is not useful. Again, same story, it will dilute the enzymes and all of that. But small sips may be helpful. Small sips in between to kind of mix or churn the food in the stomach. We've all used mixers in our homes, right? So when you have to mix something, say you are making coconut chutney, what do you put in the mixer? Coconut, chili, garlic, salt. That's it. Water. Major ingredient. Without water, it can't get mixed. You can't make the chutney. Can you? You can try it, but it will not work. Similarly, within our stomach, we are taking in all this food. For it to be mixed properly, for it to get digested properly, you have to have the water. So the churning can happen. Otherwise, it will be like the dry coconut in the mixie without water. It will not get processed properly. So, a few small sips to mix or churn the food for better digestion. You can also increase the liquid foods like we were saying. There is a tradition of using rasam or soup. Sambar also, if there is more water in it. So those kind of foods which have more water content in them, they can be assimilated better. Like we were saying, if I am eating a meal and I am thirsty and I drink large quantity of water with the meal, it will not be helpful. The food will not get digested properly. But the same water, if it is in the form of a ready-made curry or a ready-made rasam or soup, now the assimilation will happen properly, rather than a separate addition of water. So this we may all have heard, that half the stomach should be, half the stomach should be filled with food. This is a very, actually it is more complicated than this, but just for simplification, half with food and the remaining half, 1/4 with water and 1/4 to be left empty for air. Again, if you put your mixie filled to the brim, can it churn? It can't. You need some air also. That you are not putting in, it's already there. But if you fill your stomach completely with food, sometimes people say, oh, I am full up to the neck with food, I can't eat anymore. So don't eat that much. Eat so that you are still slightly hungry at the end of the meal. That means that now you will have space for water, for air, so that the churning can happen properly. I think that was it, right? When to drink the water? Any time is not a good time to drink water. Not that we should keep drinking all day. The major part of the water intake should be in the first half of the day rather than in the second half. And remember, we mentioned this, that in the first half of the day it is warmer, the sun is up, the body needs more water. Latter half of the day it is cooler, body needs less water. As the sun is going down, it's closer to the night, the body needs less water. So if I'm thirsty at night, that means, of course if I'm thirsty at night, I can drink water at night. But that is like a reminder to me that I didn't drink enough during the day. So next day I can change that. Early morning before sunrise, that's a very good time to drink water, and it is highly beneficial for health. You can drink even up to 1 liter at that time. It can be useful for the body. So drink at those times when you are thirsty. Drink early in the morning. If it is in relation to meals, drink at least half an hour before the meal or 1 hour after the meal, so that the digestive enzyme release, all that has happened, the food is getting digested. And very often you will notice this, if you are aware, that after eating a meal, sometimes maybe approximately around 1 hour after that, you will feel a little bit of thirst. Has anybody noticed? Approximately 1 hour after you eat a meal, you feel slightly thirsty, because the body requires water for assimilating that food that you have taken in. So that's also a good time to drink a little water, preferably warm water. Hot and cold water, one immediately after another, not a good choice. Again, you are shocking the body. Some people have, something chilled and then something immediately after that very hot. So it's like shocking the body. The temperature inside is of a certain level, and we are using either very, very cold or very hot water, one after the other. That's not so beneficial for the body. Similarly, boiled and unboiled water, one immediately after the other, that's also not a good choice. So sometimes when we have not had enough water, we may be able to see signals, sensations in the body because of this inadequate intake of water. For example, you might notice the sensation of thirst. You might notice some dryness of the mouth. Those are indicators that the body needs water. Those are early indicators. If we don't provide the water, then you may notice when you go to the washroom to pass urine, that the urine is more dark colored. That is also an indicator that I need to drink more water, not drinking enough water. If we still ignore this, then later you might feel dizzy, lightheaded, have a headache, feel very tired. You might have cramps in the muscles. And of course, the next day you might find that you have constipation. All those are later indicators that you have not had enough water. So with some of these indicators, we can find out very quickly when the need is there to take in more water. So what to do? Pay attention to the early and the intermediary signs and increase the water intake accordingly. What is the time?
11:30.
So before we go to sunlight, is there any question here?
Ma'am, we were discussing about that Ekadasi fasting. So many people are not consuming water, so they end up with gallbladder stones. So how much water we need to take? Is it necessary that they should not drink water throughout the day? Or we can consume early in the morning like 2 liters or 1 liter, then we can continue the fasting?
What kind of fasting are we talking about?
Entire day fasting. Because some people, if they keep the fast for the entire day, they don't even swallow their saliva, and then they don't drink water also.
See, that is a choice we have. Of course,
That's become a ritual, ma'am. Even my parents, my mother, she does that.
Yeah, so we can just inform them of the requirement of the body for water and at least have in the early morning so that it tanks up the body with water for some part of the day at least. But obviously, those are choices that we are making consciously. But maybe we don't know about the consequences of those choices. So that if they understand, then we can allow them to make their choice.
Hello, ma'am. Regarding the intake of water, so do we need to make the body take water in appropriate amount, or the body can also feel itself?
So the body is indicating to you with the signals. It depends on us whether we are paying attention to those signals or not. The body is not going to tell me take water, take water. But the body is indicating by means of the dryness of the mouth. Now if I pay attention and I become aware that my mouth is dry, it is a reminder to me that the body needs water. So I can take the water. So basically, body does need water, and the indicators of the body are telling us that yes, the requirement is there. Now we must pay attention. That's why at least when we are thirsty, we must drink. But it is also true that your thirst mechanism lags behind the need of the body for water. That means only when the body has slightly less water will you feel that thirst. If there is enough water, you won't feel the thirst. So at least when we are thirsty, we should drink. The other thing what you can do is early morning you can definitely drink 1 liter. Whether you feel the thirst or not, because that is definitely beneficial for the body. So before sunrise, early morning time, that is a very good time to drink 1 liter of water, up to 1 liter of water. And that can be useful.
Another doubt, ma'am. Earlier we used to listen like we should use RO water, and even the medical professionals used to advise. And later on, now, as of now, they came up with a new notion like RO water does lack the required minerals. So whether is it just a marketing strategy for companies to sell and launch the new products regarding the water, or is it really helpful to have the UV water?
It is definitely a fact that with the RO and the process of reverse osmosis, minerals are removed from the water. So even the government of India has issued a warning about this. And you can find it, I think, on the net if you look, that RO water is not good for human consumption. This government of India has launched. So I don't think there is any marketing strategy here. I think it is very clear that if we look at the facts, that the RO water is very often acidic. Even if you're having RO water, you have to do something about the minerals. You have to do something about the acidic content of the water, the acidity. So if we can solve those two issues, then I suppose RO water is fine. But I can tell you that in our home we used to use RO water at some point. Of course, earlier we did not use. At some point, we switched from UV to RO. We did not appreciate the consequences. And you had to keep checking, and the meter doesn't stay steady. It keeps shifting. Then we switched back to UV. But we are all free to make our choices. Make choices according to your, what you think is best for you.
Hello, ma'am. I'm here.
Yes.
Ma'am, we say that during the period after sunrise, before the sunset, the time is good for good digestion. But the period of Ramzan month, the people, they are fasting this period and they are taking food during the night time fully. Is this practice we need or not?
See, people are doing many practices. It's not for me to judge others and say what they are doing is right or wrong. I am just stating the facts.
I'm asking, this practice is need for our health, good health or not?
What do you think? Whatever we have stated this far, we have talked, when we come to the daily routine, it will become more clear. Isn't it? That during a certain period of time, your digestion is at its peak. At other times, when the digestion capacity is low, if we are going to eat, body is not going to get up and say, no, I will not take it in. Body will consume it, but there will be disharmony in the body.
Okay.
Certainly. Okay, shall we go further? So many benefits are there of exposure to sunlight. I won't go into all of them, but we all know about the role of sunlight in vitamin D in the body. And even in a country like India, where we have so much sunlight, we have a large percentage of the population with vitamin D deficiency, unfortunately. One major issue is we are not allowing the sun's rays to reach the body when it is actually time for us to take in that sunlight. So we may have heard about all these things, that vitamin D can be made in the body with the help of the sunlight. And if you have vitamin D deficiency, it's not an isolated deficiency. It can also damage the mucosal lining of the stomach, can lead to malabsorption, can lead to deficiency of vitamin B12. And if you notice today, many doctors are starting to suggest, check vitamin D, check vitamin B12. Have you noticed this? But if you look at it in an isolated way, you think, okay, B12 is less, now I have to eat B12. Vitamin D is less, now I have to take vitamin D. So-and-so vitamin is less, now I have to take that vitamin. But if you look at the whole picture, the balance of everything, then we may be able to see the significance. So definitely we want to have exposure to sunlight. If you look at the spectrum of the sunlight, you have the visible light, which we can see. Then there is, at one end of the spectrum, you have the infrared. At the other end of the spectrum, you have the ultraviolet. Ultraviolet has UVA and UVB. So the UVB rays of the sun, they are not so good for the body. So sunlight is very good for the body, but we need to take in that sunlight very judiciously. And that also we'll come to in a moment. You can also cook food with the help of the sun's rays, what is called solar cooking. Has anybody used solar cooking? Ever? Nobody, never. It's a very good option that you must try. Solar cookers are also available online. I think a lot of people in maybe Gujarat and Bangalore and many other places are making them. It's like a tin box that you can get. And if you have any place where you get a lot of sunlight, you can keep it there. And you can actually cook your food in that. And you will find that the food is very tasty. It has a slow cooking. It happens very slowly, over few hours. So many times you can, if you put rice in the cooker in the morning, you can go to work and come back at lunchtime and have hot rice, hot steaming rice, very tasty. Dals also get cooked very nicely in that. So we talked about judicious exposure to sunlight. Early morning, the sun's rays are gentle, they are not so harsh. There is less UV radiation. That time is the ideal time for getting some sunlight on the body. So approximately before 8 or 9 a.m., at least before 10 a.m. By noon, the sunlight is very harsh, more UV. It burns the skin. There you have risk for cancer. Afternoon light again has more UV, same problem. So early morning is probably the better time. For how long? If you are doing this early morning, 20 to 30 minutes is sufficient. If you look at the harmful UVB rays of the sun, the maximum intensity is between 10 to 4 p.m. So avoid being outdoors. When we were all small children, our mothers and grandmothers used to say, don't go out to play in the hot sun. Be indoors. But after 4 p.m., you can go and play outside. So that wisdom is coming from the fact that the harmful rays are maximum at that time, so we can avoid exposure at that time if possible. So there are various ways, be in shade and all that. But our day is very often ruled by our work today. But if it is important, we can try to put it in. And you all have your health trackers with you. Whatever you find useful in these sessions that you think you need to change for yourself, especially in what we have discussed, intake, water, sunlight, whatever you find useful, you can note it down and see if you can change that practice in your daily, day-to-day life. Relation of exposure to the body part. For the face and head, least exposure is needed. Body, medium, feet, maximum benefit. Of course, if you are going out in the early morning sunlight, that there is no problem, because that is not so harsh. It is useful only. When we were children, there was always exposure in school. Many times there was outdoor prayer. How many of us had outdoor prayer in our schools? Yeah, many of us. So there, it was already built into the system. We got our daily morning sunlight from the school, early AM PT, early AM prayer in the assembly. In adults, the problem today is more and more of indoor time, desk jobs. There is hardly any outdoor time, minimal or no exposure. Today, in the last session, we were planning some outdoor time. Let's see if it works out, if it is feasible. We'll try to do that. For the elderly, they also require sunlight, more so, because old bones, they are fragile. They need that sunlight. But you should avoid prolonged exposure. And there again, to be careful that if an elderly person is sitting too long in the heat, especially with the head also exposed to sunlight for a long time, then they may feel faint. It's not so good for the body. So even if they do sit for quite some time, the head can be in shade and the lower half of the body can be exposed to the sunlight. Relationship to the region. So whenever you're near water or snow, you may have heard about hilly areas. The sunlight can be more damaging, because now there is reflection of the sun's rays. So they seem to be, they are more intense. They can cause more harm to the body. So in those areas, you have to use extra caution. Let's come to the air. So intake of air, we may not be thinking much about it because we are breathing, but we are breathing so many times a day. Good indoor and outdoor air quality, that is required for the body to be healthy. If you see the air quality index, what is considered safe limit is 50 or less. Unsafe is considered anything 100 or more. These statistics are from Delhi, 2024. It was 218, and I'm sure it is not any less now. And this is not just Delhi. I'm sure if you check in many of the metropolitan cities, it will be more than 100. So we have to become more aware of air quality and its significance. So what can we do at our end to try to improve the quality of the air that we are drinking, that we are inhaling? In the outdoors, you can plant more trees and shrubs in your vicinity. If you have any area around your home, you can plant some more trees and shrubs. You can spend some time in the fresh outdoors air daily. For example, you could go for an early morning walk in a garden or a park. At that time, pollutants are minimal, and you will also get exposure to the sunlight if you do it at that time. Use motorized vehicles judiciously because they are adding to the pollution in the air. Now more and more awareness is there about renewable sources of fuel, so solar or battery powered vehicles. I think battery scooters and cars are now very easily visible on the roads, so which is nice. How about the indoor? Within the home, try to have windows open so that there is cross ventilation of the rooms, so there is exchange of air between the inside and the outside freely, so that there is fresh air being circulated rather than being in a closed space with the same air there. Windows are required. Sometimes people keep the windows closed because of mosquitoes. But we can put some mosquito nets in the window so that we can keep the window open. The idea is, okay, keep the mosquitoes out, but don't keep the air out. Let the air circulate freely. Ventilators. In the houses of the old times, there used to be ventilators in every building. Today's modern constructions, most places don't have ventilators. If you have ventilators, one is another source of air exchange, and whatever is the hot air in the room, that hot air rises and goes out through the ventilator. So you'll find that those houses that have ventilators are very cool in the summers. But those without ventilators, they become very hot because the hot air is not going anywhere. You can turn on the fan, but the fan keeps circulating the same air in the same room. We can try to minimize the use of air conditioning. Whenever possible, try to use fresh air if possible. The more and more we isolate ourselves from the environment, the more a problem for the body. In the kitchens, we can have chimneys to get rid of the, when we are cooking and all the fumes can go out. Needless to say, we can avoid all these other things with chemicals which bring out toxic fumes which are harmful for the body. Interestingly, the average intake of air of a human being per day is approximately 14,000 liters. If you see, maximum air an individual can potentially inhale in one inhalation is about 2.5 liters. But actually the amount of air an average individual inhales in one inhalation is only 500 ml. That means what? We are barely using 20% of our lung capacity at any given time. So this is important, that we can start using, we have enough lung capacity. The possibility is there, but we are not paying attention to it. Normally you'll see our breathing is very shallow. We don't do deep breathing. So we are using a very small percentage of our lungs. Respiratory rate is linked to lifespan. So respiratory rate of a human being is 12 to 14 times per minute. If you see, would a faster respiratory rate be helpful? No. Why not? In fact, if we breathe less number of times, but breathe deeper, that is better for the body. Some examples are there from animals. A tortoise has a respiratory rate of 4 breaths per minute, has an average lifespan of 150 years. A dog has a respiratory rate of 24 breaths per minute, has an average lifespan of 13 years. The problem with us is we have the capacity, but we are breathing very, very shallow. Solution is, we don't need to breathe faster. Rather, we need to breathe slowly, but more deep, with more depth. Today, this morning, we did some breathing practice, right? That same breathing practice can be done slowly, can be done fast. So it's not the number of times we breathe that is important. Breathing not forcefully slow, but as far as possible, as slower as possible, but deeper. That is beneficial. So if we are inhaling air in the right manner, there will be increased oxygen going to the tissues and organs, more efficient functioning of the organs, and then better health of the body. So what's the right way to breathe? I think we have already discussed this in the sessions in the morning, the posture sessions. So if you sit up straight and you breathe in, keeping your hand on your belly, you will notice that when you breathe in, the belly comes out. If we are not breathing this way, then we are not breathing correctly. The diaphragmatic or abdominal way of breathing, we practiced a little bit yesterday and today in the yoga class, right? How many of us were there in the morning for the yoga? Okay. So basically, when you breathe in during inhalation, the belly should come out. During exhalation, when you breathe out, belly should go in. So try to practice it for some time. If this is not happening, make it happen and then make it a habit. Think of babies. When babies sleep, can you see their belly go up and down? So when if you notice their breathing, you will notice that. Of course, they breathe at a much faster rate, babies, than we do. But you will notice that. That is important for us to notice and to keep or get habituated to breathing that way. So sit erect with the back straight, not hunched over. You should inhale through the nose, not the mouth. Breathe with the diaphragm. That is what is that abdominal breathing. Breathe deep, not fast. Rhythmically, not with jerks. And silently, not huffing and puffing. So we can practice this. Tomorrow also we can see if we can practice that. But it's all about becoming aware of our breath patterns. And even when we have certain emotions, we might find that with changing emotions, our breathing pattern changes. You've noticed that? Yes. So for breathing better, not only an erect posture and breathing through the nose, but living a healthy lifestyle. Eating food that is nurturing for the body. Not using smoking and other things. Doing regular physical exercise. This is also helpful. Wearing loose-fitting, comfortable clothing, not tight clothes. This will allow expansion of the lungs and abdomen freely. If you are wearing very tight clothes, this will restrict body movements. So there can be a problem. And we can learn and practice some of these breath regulation exercises and do them on a regular basis. They are very beneficial. We'll talk about the benefits of those when we come to that session. There is also this breath-mind link that I was just talking about. So when you have tension and anxiety, notice how is the breath. You might find, see, many times when we are anxious, we anyway breathe very shallow, but we may become even more shallow in our breathing at such times. When you're calm and happy, how is the breath? It may be very stable. When you have fear, what happens? You get shocked. You take a breath inward and you hold it for very long. These are all going to have impact, disharmony in the body. So try to become aware of this, this link between the breath and the mind. In anger, how is the breath? Yeah, huffing and puffing, no? You're trying to get rid of all that hot air inside with anger. So when the self is in harmony, when you have a calm mind, when you have a feeling that is naturally acceptable, you are likely to have a slow rhythmic breathing. But when you are in disharmony, when you are disturbed, when you have a feeling that is not naturally acceptable to you, you will notice that your breath can become erratic, it can become jerky, it can become irregular. So both options are there. You can check it at the level of breath. More importantly, we can become aware of our emotions, our feelings, and check it at that level, and the breathing will automatically settle. So that brings us to the end. If there are questions, we'll take those before I can sum up.
Ma'am, the first question is related to solar exposure, sunlight exposure. So you said that ultraviolet A and B. A is good and B is harmful to the human body. Are they available in the sunlight at a different point of times, or they are always together?
No, that's what I was mentioning. See, early morning sunlight is very good for health. But the harmful UVB rays are maximum during 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So at that time, it's better to avoid sunlight.
In general, but you said that ultraviolet A is okay, good for us.
Yeah, so the other times it is there, you can use that. But UVB particularly is the harmful one.
That is there in 10
So
to 4.
that is best to avoid, yeah.
Best to avoid. But actually our farmers are there in the field with bare bodies during this time only. But so far we don't have any specific report of farmers affected by cancer compared to other category of people.
Very much possible, because so many other factors may be linked to the cancer. We don't know. Maybe we need more research. Along the same lines, I think there are also some studies which show that people who have been exposed to sunlight for large periods of time, they are also showing some vitamin D deficiency. So I think we need more research in these areas to find out. Maybe we don't know the whole truth right now.
Okay. Similarly, when you are mentioning about exposure to the body, face minimum, other body areas medium, and feet the maximum for the beneficial. Oh, it's so. What is the reason, ma'am?
See, the head needs to stay cool.
Oh.
When the head gets heated up, there are more problems. You will notice this very easily in the elderly people, because they are very sensitive to that. So they sit for some time, then they will want some shade on the head. They will say it's too hot. But they will still want the feet in the sun, because the body is cold. So in general, it's like when you have bath also. Hot water bath is good, but hot water on the head is not so good. That's harmful for health.
Till a maximum exposure to the feet, it means that our leg is having strong skin, something.
No, not that way. Not that way.
Okay.
The body as a whole, I'm considering. But one of the indicators they mention for good health, I don't know there must be something here in this region also that will be relatable for that, is that when you have a cool head, a soft stomach, and warm feet, these are indicators of good health. That means your circulation is good and your digestion is good and all that. And your mind is calm.
Okay.
But if we are using the sunlight in the wrong ways and we heat up the head too much or we cool the feet too much, then that destroys the effort.
Okay. Then regarding air conditioning, usage of AC. Normally now people are within AC only by 24/7.
Yes, unfortunately.
But the recommendation is minimizing the usage of AC in the slide.
Mhm.
It is just to avoid CO emission or some other reason, ma'am?
It's not so good for the human body.
It is air conditioned, no? Conditioned air.
That's what. It's like when we say mineral water doesn't have minerals. So air conditioning, the air is that they have to recirculate most of the air in order to minimize their expenditure, right? So you're not getting too much fresh air. The other thing is, when in this process of cooling the air, it also becomes very dry. So it is drying up the body. So all these things are not so beneficial. First and foremost is you are losing contact with fresh air, with the air outside. That itself is not so beneficial for the body. Yeah?
Thank you.
Could you please repeat once, ma'am? Cool head, soft stomach, and
Who's speaking? You. Cool head, soft stomach, warm feet.
Ma'am, regarding intake of water, you said it's better to take in the first half of the day, but people with type B, Pitta type body, they tend to get thirsty only during the night. So
No. Not that they tend to get thirsty only in the night. Point is, they need more water. The body has lot of heat. So, such people need more water. Point is, we can consciously drink more water during the day so that we need less water at night. We may still wake up thirsty, but we may not need that much water at night. Otherwise, we can drink, but really for giving the maximum benefit to the body, it is better to have maximum in the daytime and less in the evening and night.
okay, thank you.
So the water which is kept here, what we are taking in the can, and despite heating this, so whether this is also harmful or beneficial this way. Although we are heating this water and there only we are using, so.
Yeah, so the whole thing is that when we store it in plastic, then it's not so good. Ideally, if we can store the water, first of all, whatever purification method we are using. Today, even if you see RO or UV filters, they are using plastic containers, unfortunately. So if possible, wherever possible, we can try to use non-plastic, some metal, where it will not be so harmful. It may be that microplastics are coming from very thin plastic, and that thick plastic may not have that impact. I don't know. I would have to check that. But wherever possible, we can make some choices. Where it is not possible, of course, it's not possible. We are also using, in travel, sometimes we are using plastic bottles. But otherwise, we generally carry our own flask. So we can carry warm water wherever we go with that flask, so that you can minimize wherever possible. Those choices you can make.
Ma'am, secondly, regarding the lukewarm water, does it work as a stress buster also?
Well, the water is going to the body and it is good for the harmony of the body, because basically in the body the temperature is what our body temperature is. Now, if we put in water which is closer to that temperature, it will be more beneficial. Supposing you put in ice cold water, now for it to be of any use to the body, it has to come down to the temperature of the body for it to become useful. And that will take a long time, isn't it? So now body has to make more effort to make that cold water into warm first, and then only can it be utilized by the body. Otherwise it is not doing much good to the body. So I am basically speaking from the body's perspective, that it is important for us to have warm water.
Even these disposable cups, na ma'am, the tea cups and the coffee cups that way, if it's just paper, it will just go through the cup. But there is a lining which is also very detrimental to health. That's what they say. It's better to take in stainless steel cups instead of these paper cups, and that's too bad.
Yeah. So slowly we can make those changes with awareness.
Correct.
At least in our homes we can make those changes. And even at our places of work, if we can raise awareness, then we can bring about that change. It's not so difficult.
Yes, ma'am. Even in our department, we have got rid of all these plastic bottles, and we have got those stainless steel bottles and glass ones. So we have replaced them.
Yeah.
I don't drink outside. Canteens, they give now stainless steel. Like here, plates you get stainless steel, no? Like that. Oh,
Neither too much nor too little. We need good quality water which is pure, mildly alkaline, slightly warm, with the dissolved salts in it. For an average healthy individual, 2 to 3 liters per day is sufficient. Of course, it will also depend on the season, the activity, and so on, like we discussed. We talked about the preparation of water, that we can heat it or boil it. We can add herbs and spices to it to make it more useful for the body, depending on what the need of the body is. We can store water in copper or earthen pots and avoid plastics. And if you are using copper utensils, how would you wash the copper utensils? Huh? What? Yes. Tamarind, salt, lemon, all that is okay. Please don't use things like pitambari, chemicals, those things, because you are going to drink that water, so don't use those things. When to drink? Maximum in the first half of the day, either half hour before or 1 hour after meals, or in sips with meals. Carbonated drinks, tea, coffee, etc., they are not substitutes for water. We talk of sunlight, many benefits are there. It's essential for vitamin D formation, for bone health, for eye health. But we need to take in the sunlight judiciously. Early morning is the best time where you can minimize the harmful UV rays and avoid exposure between 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. In the intake of air, we said that we want to ensure the outdoor and indoor quality of air intake as far as possible. Then we talked of how we can grow plants around the house and so on, have within the house more cross ventilation. We can increase the use of lung capacity or the quantity of air that we are taking in. Currently we are using only 20%. So breathe slow and deep. The right way to breathe is through the diaphragm, through the nose, silent, rhythmic. Factors that help breathing in the right way are proper posture, erect posture, comfortable loose fitting clothes, healthy lifestyle, regular physical exercise, and breath regulation exercises. We talked of the breath-mind link, to be aware of how our feelings and emotions impact our breath. So when we are in harmony, breath is slow, rhythmic. When we are in disharmony, it is erratic, jerky, irregular, which is showing the disharmony in the body. Okay? I think we'll close here. It has been time for lunch. And after the lunch session, the next session, we'll be doing the daily routine.